All right, so I'm walking with my wife Elvira, and we decided to talk about the five pillars of communication, which is the foundation of what we teach our clients. And she was asking me some really good questions about the five pillars, and the conversation was getting so good as we're walking here in beautiful Kotor that I said, let me whip out the camera so you can join us for this walking conversation. You had a question about the first pillar?
Yes, how we say it, the first pillar is presence and energy, and I know that your 90% of your clients are like top executives and very logical, realistic, controlling positions, and they, I think, have very structured mind. How do you explain them? About presence, about energy, because it's kind of, very flowy theme, very, how to say, spiritual.
Yeah,
And
sounds a bit woo-woo.
yes, and plus they in their like 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah, how to do that?
That's a very, very good question. So, how do I get my clients who are mainly executive CEOs in very technical fields in tech and finance? How do I get them to tap into that presence and energy? That's a question, right?
Yes.
The funny thing is, this is why it ends up being one of the most impactful, and usually is the most impactful pillar, because most people who I work with, they're in very technical fields. So they're using their head quite a lot. And because they're using their head, they are constantly overthinking. And by the way, that logical mind that they have is very helpful for their job. Many of you watching, you probably are in a very technical field, engineering, tech, finance, where you have to use your brain. You have to have that part of your mind switched on that can problem solve, that can find a solution. But in communication, that works against you. And this is exactly what I tell them. I tell them, this mindset that you have, this mental ability to problem solve, it's helped you get so far. But now you need to learn how to switch that off. Because when you communicate, communication is energetic, it is emotional, it is not logical. The words might be logical, but the communication itself is completely emotional. That's why we're able to have a conversation like this. That's why I'm able to talk about the five pillars without a script, because it is something that communication is something that happens very, very spontaneously. Therefore, it's actually a breath of fresh air for the clients who say, who see that, okay, this isn't about learning more about how to think and what else to do logically, but rather how to shut off that part of the brain that thinks too much. So it's actually quite refreshing for them.
And in the books, in the films, in different TV shows, they making an impression, a look of successful people that they cold, they greedy, they like arrogant, or like that. But when I started to meet with your friends, with your circle, with successful people, I realized that they have a completely different impression, and they have much more soft skills about what people don't really talk. For example, they're very empathetic. Yeah, and they're very easygoing, they're very open-minded. So what would you say, what soft skills you teach your clients to develop to get to the new positions, to hit their goals?
Well, I mean, let's keep on the subject of the five pillars of communication, and I'll answer that question by going into the second pillar, which is body language and tonality, actually. So it's true. Many people do think that successful people tend to be very arrogant, yet, especially when we moved to Dubai, we've made a lot of very good friends, and they are just wonderful people. Very, very lovely, kind hearted, charitable people as well. And that's a different subject. So I'm going to go on to the second pillar of body language and tonality. For those of you who haven't seen my previous videos, the five pillars of communication is the foundation for developing grounded communication skills. First being presence and energy. Second is body language and tonality. Stick around to the end so you can get all five pillars. Body language, the reason why it is so powerful is not because it simply makes you look confident. That's simple body language advice. Everybody's heard that before. What I said to Elvira was the way that we differ in approaching body language is the fact that we understand when you use what's called bioenergetics, which is physical bodily exercises, you can completely change your state, your mental and your emotional state. So you end up being way more confident, way more sharp, much more uninhibited, unstifled. That's something that we get our clients to do. We get them to unstifle themselves. And being stifled basically just means being stuck in your head, being frozen in your energy. Let's walk through here. I don't even know if we're allowed to walk through here, but let's find out. Maybe they'll kick us out. Actually, let's go onto the street. Beautiful location, isn't it, guys? So, when you learn how to use bioenergetics, you can easily change your state. You can easily start to feel way more confident. Any questions about that?
No. Can I ask? You're not answering my questions, right?
Yeah, I am. I mean, we're having a conversation, but I want to keep it on the topic of the 5 pillars.
Okay. No, I mean the last question.
What was it specifically? Grab it.
It was about what soft skills you need to develop to go to the next level in the grounded communication.
What soft skills do you need to develop to go to
Yeah.
the next level?
Yes, executive is a top leader.
Right. So, the reason we started this conversation actually was because I was saying to her that it actually doesn't take much to stand out. If you master these 5 pillars, these are the skills, by the way. If you master the 5 pillars, that alone is going to make you stand out dramatically. So let's take, okay, we spoke about presence and energy. Let's take body language and tonality. If you have above average body language and you sound more confident than most people, even that alone is going to make you stand out. So there are many executives who I work with who tell me, Shako, I have all the technical knowledge in the world, but I find that when I'm in a meeting, when I'm in a group setting, there's somebody who's less experienced than me, yet they speak up and they get respect simply because they were confident enough to speak up. So that's why I'm saying that it actually doesn't take much to stand out. The next thing is their ability to read people, which is the third pillar of communication. When somebody has the ability to read people very accurately, this allows them to calibrate socially speaking. Social calibration means adapting and adjusting your communication skills depending on the people and the context. The reason why this is one of the skills that makes you stand out very, very easily is because not many people have social intelligence. Not many people are socially aware. You need to learn how to read people very, very accurately so you can point out something that's been left unsaid. You can read between the lines. You can communicate with people how they want to be communicated with. And you can pick up on things that other people completely miss out on because of their lack of social awareness.
And you know what I realized just when you said that when you're focusing on developing this ability to read people, when, for example, you are in a conversation, you became automatically just better listener because you will focus yourself, focus your ears, eyes, all sense of your body. You will focus on noticing little details, and you will automatically just become a better listener. And people will also feel it and be more drawn to your energy.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another big example of how it doesn't take much to stand out with your communication skills. If you simply become a better listener than most people, that'll make you stand out immediately. In fact, I think I told you this On our first date, I noticed that you were one of the best listeners that I've ever met. You remember that? And that made a huge impression. I mean, clearly we got married, but it made a very, very good impression. And same thing, as a communication coach, I notice it all the time. Not that, surprisingly, I actually don't have a very high bar for communication skills from other people, because I know most people don't have great communication skills. So my bar is pretty low, believe it or not. But what's really funny is when I do notice somebody that has very good communication skills, I instantly end up liking them. I instantly build rapport with them. And even you, think about a time where you felt genuinely heard. You can probably remember it. There are very, very few people that are legitimately good listeners. And as Elvira rightly pointed out, it is practically impossible to read people accurately unless you listen to them. You have great listening skills. And this is something that we spend a lot of time developing with our clients inside Diamond Eye. As always, by the way, if you do want one-to-one support, what's that about? If you do want one-to-one support with us to work on your communication skills, you can book a free 10-minute communication audit on Zoom with us in the description below. Yep.
So, what is the brightest signs of a great communicator? How can you recognize him or her, and what's you personally paying attention to?
What do I personally pay attention to? Great question. So, so personally, I notice a couple of things. It's a good question. I notice how present somebody is. I notice if they're overthinking, if they're stuck in their head. I'm just gonna see if I can find a place where we can just stop for a second. Maybe right here. Yeah, yeah, why not? Yeah. So you can come here a bit closer. So I notice when people are very present to the moment, when they're not overthinking, because that just adds a deeper layer to the interaction immediately. If somebody's like genuinely there, genuinely present. The second thing I look for, I'm getting bored already, let's go. The second thing I look for is actually humor. And I'll tell you why, because humor is actually one of the signs that somebody is both present and unstifled. Excuse me. So if somebody has a sense of humor, that says that they are feeling present and grounded enough that they're not in their head, they're not overthinking. And the third thing I look for, or I notice rather, is, as you mentioned before, listening skills. When somebody is genuinely curious about me and they ask questions and they're looking me in the eye, to me that feels nice. In fact, that feels nice for everybody. When you feel seen, when you feel heard, that immediately makes you feel better. It makes you feel more drawn to the person that you're talking to, right? So it would be those three things. First, presence. Secondly, sense of humor. That's very important for me. And thirdly, their ability to listen and engage. There's more things below that as well, but I would say those are the top three.
And for the people who, for example, not currently looking for a coach, or who is not ready, for example, to invest, but still watching your videos and want to improve, what would you recommend to how to develop these free traits, like free, just by themselves?
I mean, I post videos, I post free videos every single day on Instagram, on YouTube. If you guys are just watching those videos mindlessly as motivation, I would discourage you from doing that. Grab a notebook. This is what I do, by the way. Even before I would hire mentors, I would watch YouTube videos and have a notebook. You know this, you've seen me do it. I would sit on the couch and watch YouTube videos and just take notes. Take notes from practical videos that I've seen. And apart from that, for those who can't afford a coach or they're not ready yet, go practice what you learn. I have many very, very practical videos that I'm sharing insights with you guys. But how many of you actually go and apply it? I don't know. I know some of you do because I hear back from you, but there's also a large amount of you that probably don't. So take advantage of that. All right, let's move on to the fourth pillar. So we have presence and energy, body language, reading people, and now we have building connections. One of the greatest desires of most people is to build meaningful relationships and connections. As human beings, that's what we desire. The last thing that somebody wants to feel is lonely, feeling like you're alone in the world, not only socially, but also professionally and romantically. You want to feel like you have comrades. You want to feel like you have alliances, that you have people you can rely on, people that you can trust and trust you as well. So the way that we approach building connections and relationships that perhaps differs is I have a very bold statement. And I tell this to my clients all the time. You can practically build connections with anybody once you learn how to do it. Does that mean you should build with everybody? No, probably not. But do I think it's helpful to learn how to do it? Yes, absolutely. Because when you learn how to do it, this is a skill. It is a trait that is transferable. And the way that you do it as well, the way that you do it, surprisingly, not so surprisingly, the first step is listening skills. Secondly, there are some certain techniques that we share with our clients in building rapport. Not going to go too deep into it today because that's a whole another video, that's a whole manifesto. But essentially it has to do with mirroring and conversational skills as well. Anything about building connections? No? All right. And finally, the fifth pillar of communication is, I want to see where we can stand comfortably again. Oops. No, it won't be awkward. Yeah. All right. So the fifth pillar of communication is confidence and authenticity. The reason why this is the fifth is because confidence is not a practical skill. Confidence is how you feel internally. And the way I distinguish genuine confidence between fake confidence is real confidence comes from within. I'm getting really wet here, but that's okay. We're confident about it. Real confidence comes from within, which is why it's called self-esteem. Self-esteem comes from the self. It doesn't come from the external environment. Otherwise, it would be called external esteem. So if you rely on anything external to feel confident, by the way, that might be effective, but it's not sustainable. For example, if you feel confident from buying a Lamborghini or a Rolex or making a certain amount of money, that is very fragile confidence. And I'm getting really wet. Let's keep walking. The reason why it's fragile confidence is because once that money gets taken away, which it can, or the Rolex, or the Lamborghini, or the promotion even, once those things get taken away, what are you left with? What are you left with? Where's your self-esteem going to go then? So true confidence, there are certain pillars within the pillars of communication that we have for confidence. And I'll share them with you now as well. The way that we approach confidence, our method that I came up with is first, it's a three-step system. First, it's self-awareness. You have to be self-aware. You have to understand what makes you feel insecure. You have to understand what makes you feel confident. You have to understand your triggers and so on and so forth. Self-awareness is huge. For anybody that's been following me for a while, you know that. The second step is self-acceptance. This is so underrated and underutilized. Self-acceptance means accepting the parts of yourself that you might be ashamed of. It means accepting the sides of yourself. Walk with me, baby. It's accepting the sides of yourself that you're afraid of expressing, that you're insecure about, and giving it the level of acceptance that a little child craves from his parents or her parents. You're essentially self-soothing. That's what acceptance is. Acceptance is just like this little cat, this little kid. So many cats in Montenegro. Acceptance is truly, truly accepting and not trying to change, just surrendering to those feelings of insecurity, of anxiety, surrendering to those feelings. Meaning, by the way, practically what this looks like, you're probably wondering, all right, but how do I accept these feelings of anxiety? Let me tell you how. Practically, it means actually feeling those feelings, sitting down and allowing yourself to feel those feelings of frustration, of anxiety, of fear. Does that make sense?
Yes, and can I just ask a question about self acceptance? Because I like this topic a lot. How can you say, if, for example, I don't fully self accept myself, how does it, you can say it about the person, how it damages someone's communication skills, the way they're holding the space, the way they interact with people? How can you see it?
It's a very good question. So you can see if somebody's not self-accepting because they're very critical of other people. They're highly critical of other people.
Wow.
For example, if somebody, we discussed this earlier, but I get hate sometimes on my Instagram, on my YouTube, and usually the profiles, like 99% of the time, the profiles are from anonymous people. And if you have an anonymous account and you're hating on a random person, heavily criticizing them, what does that suggest? What does it suggest? It suggests that you're probably frustrated with your own situation. And these people, by the way, apart from being highly critical of others, and we're going to run out of space in a couple of minutes, so we'll wrap up soon. Something else that they do is they they compensate for it. For example, maybe they have a very large watch collection. By the way, there's nothing wrong with having a large watch collection, but if they have it because they're filling a void, then it's a problem. Or having a car collection. By the way, I love watches. In fact, I have a watch collection. I would love to have a car collection eventually because I'm a car lover. But if I know I'm doing it because I'm trying to fill a hole, fill a void, then that suggests a lack of self-acceptance. Make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's a clear sign. If, for example, if you're watching this video now and you're thinking like, am I self-accepting myself now or not? Because I'm studying now in a program of emotional maturity as well, and I basically yesterday watched the webinar about self-acceptance, and they also say that if, for example, you don't like something in someone, for example, you walk in, you see something, you're comparing inside your head this thing with yours. For example, you are not feeling enough attractive for a woman, for example, and you will pay attention on another man attractiveness book. Basically, if
You'll
you
compare yourself.
yes, so it's for you. You need to be super self aware of what you're thinking about another people is basically what you're not accepting in your own self.
What you criticize in other people is what you're not accepting in yourself.
Yeah.
Very well said. Very, very well said. What I'll do is I will pause this video here, delete some things in the storage, and get back and wrap it up with you guys. All right. So to wrap up, let's talk about the second part of confidence, which is authenticity. Authenticity means being completely unstifled and unfiltered in your communication. This doesn't mean that you say absolutely everything that's on your mind. You need to practice social awareness, but is it not exhausting putting on an act, putting on a mask anytime you go to work, anytime you go to a social event? I remember myself that I used to go to weddings, like with family friends and even family, and I thought I had to put on a certain facade, a certain mask in order to fit in. In fact, even the way that I would dress only to impress people. That's the only reason why I would dress up, because I would pay so much attention to my hair and to the way that I looked, and I wasn't being authentic. And you know what this resulted in? It resulted in not having authentic relationships, and people eventually just not being friends with me anymore, just dropping me as connections. This impacted my professional life, my personal life, everything. It wasn't until I started being myself everywhere I went. And that means if I didn't want to talk much, I wouldn't talk much. That's when I started building authentic relationships. And one quote comes to mind. I think I see you have a question. One quote comes to mind before I hand over to Elvira. And that is from Dr. Zeus. He says, "Be who you are and say what you will, because those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter." You like that?
I'm curious about this authenticity because I feel like not many content creators or coaches talk about it. So, how can someone understand what their authentic self look like?
It's a good question. If you're struggling to discover what your authentic self is, then simply ask yourself, what situations do you hold back from speaking? Which situations do you hold back from laughing, from telling a joke, from saying something that you think is interesting but you hold back? It's those moments of hesitation where your authenticity is being covered, it is being hidden. It's those moments. Make sense?
Yes.
You sure?
Yeah. But you can add something else. I'm
Yeah?
curious more about it.
You're curious more about it? About how somebody can tap into their authenticity? Well, it's very simple because it has to do with expression. Express yourself more regularly. Express yourself not only more regularly, but more boldly. I say this to my clients actually. When you speak up with confidence. Even if you feel like your voice is going to shake, do it because you're training yourself. You're training yourself to be expressive even when you don't feel like you want to be. Authenticity, by the way, is a product. It is a product and a result of expression, of presence, of conscious body language, which becomes natural, becomes second nature, and all the other pillars as well. So it ties in beautifully into one another. So anyway, guys, do you have any last thoughts?
I will talk about it behind the cameras.
Behind the scenes? All right. So to wrap up, the 5 pillars of communication: presence and energy, body language and tonality, reading people, building connections, and confidence and authenticity. Tell me in the comments, which one do you guys resonate with most? Which one do you want to see a video about? Maybe I'll make a manifesto for each pillar. And that's it. If you want to work with us, book a call with us in the description. Thank you so much for your support. See you guys next week. Ciao, ciao. Say bye.
Bye.